Okay, here we go again. Thank you for joining me. Got an experience today from the usual source, which is the ndurf.org website, but at the end of the day, this story is coming from a place that we all have been to and we all go back to. It's just sometimes difficult to remember it or experience it while we are here in this physical realm for whatever reason. But today, let's use this opportunity to remind ourselves or to revisit that place or to reconnect, whatever you want to call it, with this other dimension that is often difficult to describe and a place that seems a lot more pleasant and joyful to be a part of than Earth can be. But anyway, let's have a look what Joan LH I from the ndurf.org website has to say about it. So she says, I had a spinal anesthetic to repair a loose tendon in my left ankle. When the surgery was nearly complete, the anesthetic became high. I went above my waist and stopped in my heart and lungs. I was without oxygen for about 8 minutes, depending on the documentation and who I spoke to. I was 25 years old, vibrantly alive, and radiantly healthy. I had completed a degree in theology with an emphasis in youth ministry 2 years earlier. I was not able to find work in my church and owed a lot of money from school loans. Needing a job and willing to work hard to pay back my loans, I accepted a position at McDonald's. Initially, I was embarrassed to be working at McDonald's with a degree, but ended up really enjoying it. I was working as a swing manager, and I was working with lots of young people and had great friends. After 2 years of working at McDonald's, I started making plans to go back to school to become a registered nurse. I enjoyed school and was good at it, and wanted a job that I enjoyed and would enable me to be financially stable. Life was great and getting better. Before starting back at school, I wanted to find out if there was anything I could do to stabilize my ankles. I had weak ankles and frequently fell over without warning. I would be standing up 1 minute, then be flat on my face the next. It was funny, but potentially dangerous. Knowing nurses spend a lot of time on their feet, I wanted to correct this problem before beginning my studies. A surgeon recommended a simple surgery to tighten the tendon in my left lateral ankle. I would have a spinal anesthetic. It sounded like a simple solution to a long-standing problem, and I agreed to proceed. So, I remember 2 things about my surgery and hospitalization. I remember completing paperwork as part of the admission process with my mum by my side. There were lots of papers and I felt excited and nervous at the same time. The chairs were comfortable and the cubicle wood dark. I remember being pushed in a wheelchair by one of the high school girls in the youth group I co-facilitated. I don't know who it was, but it was lots of fun. I don't remember anything else for nearly 2 years except my near-death experience, which I will share later. The events that unfolded, as they were told to me, are the following. My parents and some friends were waiting for me in the hospital waiting room when they heard a code being called in the operating room. My mum told me I knew it was you. The surgery had nearly finished and my tendon was repaired when the spinal anesthetic went terribly wrong. Instead of keeping my lower body numb, it climbed higher and put my lungs and heart to sleep as well. I did code. I really don't know how long I was without oxygen because I heard different accounts from different people. It seems to have been somewhere between 5 and 8 minutes. They wheeled me past my parents in a hospital gurney into the intensive care unit. I was originally in a fetal position and the doctors did not know if I was ever going to be okay. They didn't know if I would remain in a fetal position or not. I was not conscious. Apparently, my younger brother was visiting me a day or two after the accident and started yelling at me to come back. He and I were very close, and I had always felt particularly protective and loving towards him because he was 5 years younger than me. That's when my physical body started to improve. I awakened from the coma and had the ability to move all of my body. I could speak, I could answer questions, and I knew who I was and who other people were. It appeared that I was back to normal, except for my memory. My parents brought me home just a few days after I had checked in. My mum later told me, "I knew that no matter how you did or did not come out of this, you were my daughter and I loved you. If I had to take care of you for the rest of my life, I would have done that. I just wanted you to be alive, and you were." I don't remember any of this, however. I do remember an incident that frightened me to the core of my being about 6 months after the surgery. I had gone back to work with the support of my dear friends who own the restaurant. I can't imagine that I was very effective. I came home one day after a staff meeting and tried to read my notes from the meeting, but I couldn't. I couldn't put the words together. Nothing made sense. I had no idea what the meeting had been about, and I felt scared. It was funny that before this 6 months time frame, I was forgetting so much that I had no idea I was forgetting anything. I was very frustrated that my parents would not leave me home alone. Here I was, 25 years old, a college graduate, used to being very independent, living under the surveillance of my parents once again. My mum helped me make several appointments with our local physicians, including those that had been part of my surgery. We both wanted to know exactly what had happened. Would it happen again? And would I ever again be normal? We did not get any answers. Some doctors cancelled our appointments and would not reschedule. Others told me that since my physical exam was within normal limits, I was fine. Instead of answers, we found more questions. Eventually, I chose to bring forward a lawsuit. Not for revenge, but for answers. I had to know what had happened and what had caused the high anesthesia, and would it happen again, and would I ever be normal? It was an horrific experience. I hated suing people, but I needed answers, so did my parents. I won the lawsuit. We settled out of court. A lawsuit is an awful thing for everyone involved, and we wanted it over as soon as possible. In the end, I found out whatever part of my brain improved at the end of the 2 years would... However, I'll just say that again. In the end, I found out that whatever part of my brain improved at the end of the 2 years would function well, and whatever didn't, wouldn't. Since that verdict, science has proven that our brain cells do indeed regenerate, and I remain hopeful for ongoing improvements to my memory and brain function. Once I became aware of my brain injury, I felt more alone than I had ever felt in my life. The doctors wouldn't meet me in any quality discussion about my physical and mental experience. My family couldn't hear my spiritual or emotional story and would quickly change the subject when I started talking about what had happened. I began to question my sanity, even though I felt certain about what had happened. My parents were staunch Catholics, and there wasn't room in their perspective for what I had experienced. It didn't fit with anything they had been taught by their church about death. My parents lived their entire lives within the church and found it easier to discount my experience than the church's teachings. There just wasn't room for it. I knew they loved me, but I also knew I couldn't talk about what had really happened to me with them or anyone. I felt memories deep inside of something I could not quite grasp at a conscious level. I carried the experience of my near-death experience within me, but it was nearly impossible to communicate it with anyone else because I couldn't describe it and because they didn't want to hear it. The experience I'd had within me, like one of those slippery fish toys children play with in the bathtub. The tighter I tried to hold on to it, my near-death experience, the faster it would slip away. It was difficult to describe, but I felt like my body was in this world and most of me was somewhere else. I didn't want to be in this body. I wanted to be back there. I longed to talk to somebody about my experience, but nobody wanted to hear it. They were afraid, and I knew it. It was better to keep quiet. I had caused enough trouble by nearly dying. I was terrified that I would never be able to remember, and I would always have to be taken care of, that nobody would ever understand what I had experienced and was experiencing, that I would never be a registered nurse or even able to read coherently, and I would always need to be taken care of, like a child. I took up running. I ran and ran and ran. While I was running, I felt free. I ran with our German short-haired pointer, Penny. It was uncanny how I felt she understood me in a way no human could. We ran together. In the running there was peace. One footfall after the other. Breathing hard, feeling the wind on my face. The fear receded. I knew I wasn't crazy. Every cell of my body knew what I had experienced was real when I was running. I allowed myself to accept it. When I stopped running, I tried to take care of the people who loved me by denying it or trying to make it fit within their belief system, which was my old belief system. My desire to please my parents outweighed my desire to proclaim my story. I did not want to be different, but I was. I remember feelings and impressions. I did not see a tunnel. I did not see a light. I did not have a life review. I did not see Jesus or any other enlightened being. My experience was different from most near-death experiences. I'd simply had this profound experience of love, oneness, and freedom. I went from being in my body to being in a place of absolute love. I can only describe it like I was in a swimming pool, but even my body was filled with this loving. I was one with it, but also apart from it. I was still me, but I was far more than me. I was one with everything. It was all good. I did hear beautiful music, but it wasn't like our music. The music itself was part of me, but I don't think I was singing. It was more like it was just a part of me and I was a part of it. But it was much more than just me. I felt weightless and free, absolutely free. I was enfolded in this loving and I was a part of it too. There was not one single part of me or part of anything else that was not love. Individuals do not exist in the same way we do here. I was still me, but I was also a part of the loving. I simply knew things without hearing a single spoken word. I was love. I knew religions had it all wrong. All religions. There was no rules and judgment. There are no way rules or judgments could flow from this. They made it so complicated when it was really very easy. There is only love, and we're all a part of it. There is no way we cannot be loved, no matter what. We are love. Time does not really exist. I have always loved my family on earth, but I did not miss them at all. I did not even think of them. I was more happy and joyful than I ever remember being. I felt absolutely connected to everything and everyone. We are interconnected. We are all one. There certainly is no such thing as death. This experience has changed me. I wish I could say that I've never, ever been angry, never again fallen into the illusion of separation, and never again doubted my livability, but that is not true. I am in human form with all the challenges and opportunities this existence provides. But I know I am much more than that, and so are you. This experience altered the trajectory of my life and continues to unfold. I did have a miraculous healing. Most of my brain functions very well. I cannot comprehend mathematics, which I was never very good at. I forget things easily, especially names. Fatigue makes my memory worse. I never regain those 2 years. I've lost large patches of time since then as well. But I am vibrantly, joyfully alive. I did go back to college, although I failed anatomy and physiology the first time I attempted it. For somebody who had always done well academically, that felt humiliating, but I passed it the second time. I worked as a registered nurse for 20 years and loved it. I especially enjoyed working with people approaching death. I have no fear of death, and that in itself brings peace to people approaching their transition. I studied theology some more and earned a master's in pastoral theology. My desire was to bring the light to the church by working with children, teens, and families. Eventually, it became clear that I simply cannot work with any organized religion. Religion serves many people, and I do not judge it, but nor can I live within their restricted belief systems. I tried for many years. I found deep healing through the University of Santa Monica and made peace with the conflicted areas within myself since my near-death experience. While I appreciate my parents' values, I have chosen to live my own life, finally. Part of that is going public about my near-death experience. My dear mum and closest ally through all of this has made her transition, and I feel closer to her now than I ever did when she was in the physical form. She gets it now, and our love is deep. I have an insatiable desire to read, to learn, and to help people heal from all the limiting beliefs we carry about ourselves. I have read many books about near-death experiences and feel a compulsion to hear other people's stories. I currently work as a soul-centered professional coach and will soon begin working as a volunteer within the hospice. I remain passionate about teens and I suspect I will be working with them when my own precious daughters are off to college and living their own lives. For now, my heart sings whenever I help someone awaken to the reality that they are divine beings having a human experience, and they are loved just as they are without doing anything. I have been married happily for 18 years, and we have the gift to be parents to two exquisite young ladies, now 14 and 16. I believe they are the reason I came back. They are going to make this world a better place just by being in it. I am very happy and hope to remain in my physical body for many more years to come. I have a lot more joyful work to do and hope to be in this body for many, many more years. But when it is time to go home, again I will be celebrating. I can't wait. So that's the end of Joan's experience. So as I read that one through, I was a little bit kind of confused how it was going to unravel, because it took a different approach to other experiences I've read, in terms of someone dying and then they have their experience and then they have a bit of a reflection. But in Joan's case, she decides to explain her condition and what she needs fixed and the surgery she has, and then kind of talks a little bit about how her life unfolded after this surgery, rather than jump straight into what happened during her near-death experience. So she reflects on being very confused, both in terms of what happened to her during her experience and how to actually cope with what this experience means to her, in terms of it having an element to it that conflicts with what she believed as when she was younger, and also it kind of goes against what her parents have always taught her and what they believe as well as Catholics. So a few little differences there in how this experience is shared. But when she does actually get to the near-death experience, it's quite it's only not too many words, but obviously this is the part I value and appreciate the most, because it gives us that little bit of a glimpse into what this other dimension I read every week is about. And in her case, she doesn't let us down. It's the usual love and oneness, and I mean, it's not always like that, but obviously I've come across a fair few experiences where those elements are repeated. So anyway, let's I pretty much summed it all up there pretty quickly, but yeah, I'll go through it now in a little bit more detail and try to break it down with a bit more analysis, paragraph by paragraph. So Joan has this problem with her ankle, and she feels young, she's healthy, she's only 25 years old. She seems like a very happy soul, this Joan, often saying she's vibrantly alive and radiantly healthy and just really buzzing around and loving life. And I come across these experiences and I guess people in general in my day-to-day life, and it just amazes me that some people seem more immune to the challenges and stresses that life can bring, and I just wonder, is that a genetic thing? Is that a conditioning thing? Is that because they've been raised in a certain way, or is it some connection to their soul or the divine which gives them this vigor and joy for life, and mine is there, but it just comes and goes, and it depends on a lot of things in terms of my energy levels, in terms of what I'm experiencing externally, what sort of situation I'm in. Is there fear surrounding the experience I'm about to have? All these things can take that joy of being and loving the life as a human away. And when you read experiences like this where they seem to be in a more elevated level for a greater majority of the time, you just kind of wonder, I kind of wonder, is how is this done? Is it possible? Is it achievable for the rest of us? And do these people who seem to have this joyous appreciation and gratitude for life, how do they cope with these situations that life throws at you that can drag you away from that state? So for me, who gets a little bit of depression here and there, I guess it just gives me a little bit of jealousy to know that there are people with that genetic makeup and chemical makeup in their heads that makes life seemingly blissful. But it's obviously not all like that. We're all humans and all exposed to these swings that life throws at us, and I'm sure we all experience darkness in one form or another. So Joan, here she is, 25 years old, loving life, really healthy, just finishes a degree in, she says BA, I say degree in theology. I don't know what BA actually means, and it must be an American way of describing, maybe it's bachelor's or something like that. Anyway, so she's obviously gone to the Australian equivalent of university, I guess it's a college in America, and studied theology, and her field of interest is to go into the youth, to work with the youth of the world. And obviously going to school, it doesn't matter where you go, it costs a lot of money. And she finishes her course and unfortunately can't find any work at her church. So due to her student debts and wanting to pay them back, she decides to find a job somewhere else if she can't get a job in the place she wants, and heads to good old McDonald's. At first, she says she's embarrassed to be working at McDonald's. I guess as you would be if you had your heart set on a job in the church or somewhere like that, and you aren't able to use the knowledge you've acquired through all the study you've done at one of these places, and you end up at a place called McDonald's, where pretty much anyone can get a job, you would be, I guess, a little bit humiliated. But like lots of things in life, those things that don't seem right at the time or are hard to do often pay dividends in the end. And she says, like, after a little while, she works her way up the chain a bit, begins to work in more of a managerial role at McDonald's, and starts to work with the young people like she had trained for. Obviously, it's not in a church though, it's making hamburgers, but she doesn't seem to care. She's enjoying it, and she makes some good friends. So after a couple of years, I guess she's been applying in her field of study in other places, but not able to find anything still, where she decides, okay, well, I might try something else, and decides to become a registered nurse. She likes studying, she's good at it, and she thinks a nursing degree is a good path to take because it offers her a bit of financial stability and job security. So, she repeats it again. Life is great and it's getting better. She's just loving it, really enjoying being alive. And she understands, though, that she's got this condition with her feet, or her ankles to be more specific. And she says that sometimes she can just be standing up and the next minute she'll be flat on the ground. And this is due to a condition in her ankle that one of her tendons aren't able to tighten properly, and it obviously leads to her falling over. So being a nurse and a job where you do spend pretty much the whole shift on your feet, depending on what kind of nursing you do, but if you're working in a hospital, you're going to be walking around a lot. So clearly, to get your degree in nursing, you're going to need to have your mobility fixed and functional, and she understands this. And obviously this is where her experience with this other dimension, or her near-death experience, or her peek behind the veil, or whatever you want to call it, all these words pretty much mean the same thing, happens. So she says she remembers only two things that happened during her surgery. She remembers completing the paperwork when she first gets there. She remembers looking at the chairs that are in the hospital. She remembers feeling a little bit nervous, but also excited at the same time. So that's it. That's all she really remembers, and doesn't remember being put under, doesn't remember her hospital bed, doesn't remember anything other than this first, entry into the hospital, which is unusual because, usually we get the story of what actually happened to these people when they right up to the very minute where they get put under. But she doesn't. She just goes, so that's it. She just remembers the paperwork and being pushed around by a wheelchair by one of the high school friends that she works with. So, what actually happens here? This is from the perspective of other people that were in the hospital at the time, or family and friends who have explained to her at a later date what exactly occurred, and they say to her that she was without oxygen for between 5 to 8 minutes. Now, I don't know how that's possible when you're in a hospital. Surely this, can't happen, but and I don't know the situation in terms of how it actually comes about, because she doesn't really go into too much detail, just says that this is how long she had stopped breathing for. So she says the doctors find her in a fetal position, she's not conscious, and she basically slips into a coma. And she's in this coma for a day or two, and her brother apparently comes to visit her and starts yelling at her to wake up. She has this close bond to her brother, but obviously she's in a coma, so she's not physically aware that he is there. But apparently this connection, this visit, is what triggers her to awaken from this coma. So when she comes around, she could speak, she could answer questions, she knew who she was, and she knows who other people are. But you got to remember, she is only repeating what other people are telling her she was like at this point, because her memory is totally blanked out from this period. everything was fine. Everything was fine except her memory. And then she jumps to an incident that happened 6 months later. So this story kind of jumps around a bit, which makes it hard for you guys to understand exactly what's going on. It's, I guess, all this surgery and what happened and how it all came about is, from my point of view, a little bit irrelevant because it's not the part that interests me, and obviously it's significant to the person writing the experience, and it is good to get some kind of background as to how it actually happened. But I think if you're listening to these experiences, this is not why you're doing it. So you want the next dimension part. And so my apologies if it's a little bit hard to follow this bit, but yeah, I'll try and plod through it. And again, so 6 months later, she's just saying that 6 months later, her memory's still terrible. She's this college graduate. She's used to living on her own. She's a smart woman. She's obviously had some experience living independently, and here she is. She's frustrated, and she's 25. She's once again back at home under the care of her parents, and I guess that would be frustrating. You think you have your whole life ahead of you. You're a young woman. You've got a degree under your belt, and suddenly, you're in this situation where all your dreams have kind of been ripped away. You're no longer able to remember what's been happening. Your independence has been taken away, and you're needing care around the clock. So you can imagine that this would really infuriate someone, especially knowing that you don't really know why this has happened. You've got no answers. So this is her next port of call, is to find out what's wrong with her. How did this happen? She's basically been left in the lurch here. 6 months later, there's been no real improvement after this coma, other than in terms of her memory. She feels like herself, but she just has lost her ability to remember anything. So she's got a bit of amnesia. So her next stage to find out is obviously, as you would, is to go back to the hospital, go to the doctors and ask them, why am I this way? I was fine before I came in. My memory worked perfectly. And now I am in this situation where it's gone. I can't recall anything, which obviously makes living life very difficult. And anything that requires memory, which is pretty much everything in everyday life, you can't function as a normal person or an able-bodied person. So you're going to go back, you're going to try and find answers, and it sounds like when she does this, the doctors are having none of it. They don't want to explain to her what has happened at all. It sounds like they're covering up a bit. So her next decision is to sue them. She feels like this is her last option. If the doctors aren't going to provide her with the information she needs, she's going to get it another way, or punish them another way. Is that a better word? But this experience of suing someone is a very negative one for her. She feels she hates suing people, and she needs the answers and finds this is the only way to do it. So she does. She sues, settles out of court, and just glad it's all over. And in the end, she finds out that her brain, that the brain injury she has, if it doesn't get better after around 2 years, it's probably never going to. She's probably going to have that condition for her life. And it doesn't say what she got paid out, but that is the outcome. She says that since this verdict, science has proven that our brain cells do indeed regenerate. So she's hopeful for ongoing improvement in her brain function and memory. So this is obviously hard news to take, and she feels in despair, I guess. And this, I tie this back to how I started this experience by saying, how do people go through their lives feeling good all the time? And I just now that I'm rereading this experience, see that this lady has had a lot of difficulty and challenges, and having a brain injury of this magnitude is going to really put you in a place of severe darkness, because it's ripped away your independence and passion for life, and this is the loneliest and darkest place she has ever been in her young life, and she can't really get any help. The doctors are obviously took them to be sued to actually say anything, and once they've done that, they refuse to really assist her at all. So then she kind of jumps to what happened a little bit during this experience, and she doesn't go into detail at this point, but she just starts reflecting on her spiritual journey and feels as though the near-death experience she had was is probably, it could have potentially just been a trick of her mind. She might be crazy because this is not what she has been taught. She has been raised a Catholic, and from a Catholic's perspective, these sort of things don't happen. So she just knows that there's no real room for her sharing what has happened, because she's having difficulty believing it herself and wondering, what's the point? Like, why would I tell someone else and kind of upset their apple cart in terms of what they believe, when I'm not really 100% sure what has happened to me, and I don't really know how to talk about it. So this is on her human level, in her mind. This is how she's assessing the situation. But she says deep down, there's some part of her that just knows what happened is truthful. It's real, and it's just indescribable. And this is the kind of internal battle she is going through at the moment, or was going through when at this point of her life. So she decides to take up running, and when she runs, she feels a little bit more connected to this part of herself that is accepting, I guess, of what has happened to her. And when she's in this place, she's not really in her head, because she's just in that moment. She feels free. She's just concentrating on the wind in her face, and one foot going after the other, and her breathing, and it takes away her, I guess, awareness on what her brain is going through. And this helps her connect to what actually happened. So before I start going through her actual experience with this next dimension again, I'll start by saying look, there's no two ways around it. It's confusing being a human. It's as simple as that. Like, yesterday I was watching a show on Netflix called Ricky Gervais, some sort of comedy show, Armageddon or something it's called. And it was very politically incorrect, and I found it very funny. It was touched on things like religion. Now, Ricky Gervais seems to be a very non-religious person. He doesn't believe in God. He uses the argument that it was actually quite funny. He talks about, well, how does prayer work? Like, is it like a democratic like system? So if 5 people vote for a certain outcome and 10 people vote for the opposite outcome, do the 10 people who voted for it get their way with God? And when you look at it like that, it is kind of ridiculous. Like, how does prayer actually work? What if someone's praying for exactly the opposite thing? Who gets the preferential treatment from God, and all that sort of thing? And it made me kind of question my own faith and my own belief in God, and it was and you constantly faced with situations like that as a human. There's science that tells us that we've got all the answers, that there's nothing more than what we can really measure and see with our own eyes. And it brings me down when I hear things like that, to tell you the truth. And I get drawn into this pattern of thoughts that make me question, is my own experience with the light real? Is it possible that what I am experiencing is false? Or so what? Why can other people, and some of them are highly intelligent, not see what I see and see this divineness everywhere? And it confuses me, and it puts me in a bad mood, to be honest, because it makes me question, is this physical realm all there is? And if it is, that's pretty upsetting on a couple of levels, because if that's the truth, then that means there's no God and there's no loving heaven awaiting us all after we leave here. But I guess it has to be one or the other, doesn't it? It has to be that they're right and there's a total scientific explanation to why we're all here, or there's the other field of thought which says that we are created by a divine energy or presence or God or source, and that is the answer to the puzzle, and that dimension awaits us after we cross over from here. So it's just, for me, when I hear counteracting views, I guess it's good in a way, because it makes me ask more questions, I guess, and makes me more curious as to why we don't have the answers, and pushes me in that direction of seeking them. And when you do that, I guess when you start looking for God, that's when God begins to appear. But if you're a sensitive person and you're easily offended, I wouldn't watch that Ricky Gervais one, because although I found it funny, I'm sure there's just as many people who would be pretty appalled by it. But if you can watch it, I guess, for the first 5 minutes and get a pretty good idea if you're going to enjoy it or not. If it's going to be your cup of tea, you'll find out pretty quickly. But so I guess one way of myself, of how I remind myself or balance out my interpretation of this experience I have, and is to investigate these experiences, and they, I guess, remind me of the other view to what a lot of humans seem to be pushing at the moment, and that is that, and a fair chunk of the human population, I think, does believe in a God. It's just for whatever reason, it's not as mainstream as I guess the craziness of the world and the drama of this world. It gets pushed to the side a little bit and put out of sight and out of mind. So yeah, one way I tap back into that is to read these experiences. So on that note, let's see how she experienced this next dimension. So Joanne says that she hears music, but it's not like our music. She says the music was a part of me, but she wasn't singing. It's like it was a part of me and I was a part of it. There was this sort of oneness there, but at the same time, it was more than just I was. So she's experiencing this music and she feels like she is the music, but also feels separate to the music at the same time. So get your head around that one. I struggle too, but on a weekly basis, I read things similar to this, that there's all these things going on that in our reality seem impossible, but in this other dimension, it seems normal. So she feels free. She feels weightless. She's engulfed in this love. She just describes it as love. She says there was not one single part of me or anything else in this dimension that wasn't love. And then she says something interesting. She says individuals don't exist in the same way we do here. And that's pretty clear by what she's explaining. She's saying, she's everything, but she's also a singular person as well. Whereas us in this world, we are very singular. We are very separated. We are very much trapped in these little bodies and minds that are clearly, separate from everything else. But in this other dimension, this shell we wear as humans is no longer there, and that separation is not existent. It seems the connection in this other realm to other beings and experiences and whatever you want to call it, to love, is just pretty much all there is. So in this other realm, she also says that she simply knows things. She doesn't need information spoken to her. It's like she doesn't even say, I think of a question and I get the answer. She just says, she just knows. It seems she knows everything. And what she's describing here is very much like how I'd like the God or the source energy to be, this all-knowing, all-loving, all-accepting, unconditionally welcoming energy or presence or experience that we all come from and we all go back to. So this is in alignment with what I hope that I get to go back to in what it's like. You just have the answers to everything. You're in this loving environment. You are love yourself, and sounds perfect, doesn't it? So she repeats, well, she doesn't repeat, she just goes on to say she knows that religions have it all wrong. In this place she is in, she says there's no rules, there's no judgment. And I guess this is why she says that the religions haven't got it right, because there's too many rules and conditions and placed on their values, and in this place there are no such things. Everyone's welcome. Doesn't matter what you like. It just seems to run counter to what Joanne's thoughts are on. I guess she's reflecting a lot here on her Catholic faith, which is what she was brought up with, and this place she's in. I don't know what part of the faith she's talking about specifically, but obviously there's some rules and teachings in this church that run counter to what she's experiencing in this love-like dimension. So she just repeats next. She says, there is only love, and we're a part of it. There is no way we can't be loved, no matter what, because we are love. She says in this other realm, time does not exist. It's a human thing to experience time, whereas in this other realm, there is no such thing. And I read this and I think back to what I've heard in other teachings, experiences, that there's no such thing as time. So here we experience it, and what I was saying before, there's only love in this other realm, whereas here we experience a lot of fear and separation and isolation, which, so there's three things there. There's time, there's love, there's timelessness, there's love, and there's connectedness in this other dimension. Whereas here, we experience time, we experience fear, and we experience loneliness, isolation, disconnection. And I guess I relate to what I'm saying here to what I have been taught or read or listened to in other experiences and spiritual teachings. This is why we come here. This is why we come to Earth, to experience the opposite of love, to experience the opposite of connectedness, to experience the opposite of timelessness. And although that sounds weird, when you read these near-death experiences and they go to a place where love, no time, and connectedness is all there is, it is clear that this is a potential reason that we are on Earth, to get a taste of not being a part of that that dimension is like. And the only way we can really understand what not having these feelings of connectedness, timelessness, and love is like, is to come to a realm like Earth and experience the opposite. So that's why we probably all, at least I do anyway, do not like this experience very much. There's obviously blissful, joyful, connected type experiences, but a lot of the time you do feel lonely, you do feel disconnected, you do feel the bearing of time weighing down on you as you get older and you watch yourself age. You do feel like there's not a lot of love around Earth. And if we do come from this dimension where all these things I just mentioned are in abundance, it's no wonder that there's a part of us that craves to feel these or have these experiences again and not have the opposite of them, because they're difficult, they're painful, they're challenging to experience. And hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight potentially to why you might not be enjoying life, or you might be challenged by it on a regular basis, and that's because it's not what you're used to. You're used to being in a place that is the opposite to Earth in a lot of ways. So next time you're challenged by life, keep that in mind. Just potentially think that this could be why we're here and why it is so difficult. So that's all she really talks about in this whole experience from this next dimension. Now she moves on by saying, we're all one, we're all interconnected in this other realm, and clearly we are here as well. It's just not, it's just brushed aside or overlooked or hidden, that this connectedness that we are all connected to this source and each other. It's not as obvious here on Earth because of the veil and I guess that knowledge is kind of removed, so we can experience this separation from the source, separation from love, and it sounds horrible to say that, but I haven't come up with or come across any real other theories as to why it is so dark on Earth and why why there is so much suffering, and other than to say that the reason for this is because we have chosen as individual souls to experience the opposite of the dimension we come from, and obviously when the opposite of being in a loving dimension is going to be a scary, challenging one, which defines planet Earth quite nicely, I think. But having said all that, we can always connect to the divine whenever we want to, and although that connection might seem disjointed and not as powerful as what we read in these experiences, it is possible to experience it whenever you like. But from my point of view, I'm not able to connect to it the way I read these experiences anyway. It seems to be we are in a much lower vibration here, and getting to the state that you hear about people experiencing in near-death experiences is almost like a fantasy. It does seem at times, but I think we all get to relive it again eventually once this experience is done, and we can connect with our soul family, guides, angels, spiritual masters, God itself, whatever you want to connect to, I guess, once this experience is over and your soul shape shifts into the next dimension. So she says there's no such thing as death, but as most people who have had a near-death experience, she says that it has changed her. And she says that this experience she's had is a bit of like a double-edged sword, because she's experienced this other dimension now, and now she's back in her body and can kind of understand what has happened to her. She tries to tap into it, but she finds that it's difficult because she's in this human form, and that presents a lot of challenges to connect to this place she's been to, like I was just saying. But at the end of the day, all she needs to do to kind of remind herself and get through some tough spots is to remind herself that she is much more than this human body, which most of us think we are, and so is everyone else. So are you, so am I, and this is what keeps her in a positive state. But yeah, this experience had changed the trajectory of her life, and it continues to unfold. She says she had miraculous healing, and most of her brain is back to normal now, and she's managed to pass her registered nursing course and has been doing that for 20 years. She says that this course has taken her to a place of helping people as they get closer to death. Her registered nursing has made her more understanding of death, and therefore she's able to help people who are crossing over, and uses her theology background as well to assist with people who are dying. She finds that she can't really tie herself down to one religion though, because of all the rules and restrictions and judgments and belief systems that religions have, and they seem very rigid, and she finds that her near-death experience runs counter to that. It was more of a freedom and unconditional love, which obviously is not what she is finding in the religion she's chosen to investigate. So yes, it just ends with her saying she has had a couple of girls, they're teenagers now, And yeah, she just feels very blessed to have had the experience she's had. She says that her physical body, it's tough to be in, but she hopes to remain in it for many years to come. She's very happy to be here on earth, just glad to be celebrating this journey we call life, and looking forward to helping people for the next few decades. And that's about it. So this experience occurred back in 1985. So yeah, you can see why she might have been a little bit reluctant to come out with it then, as near-death experiences were in their very preliminary stages of being discussed. And I think that book that kind of kicked it all off by Dr. Moody came out in the 70s at some point, and I think that was the first publication that really mainstreamed near-death experiences and got people talking about them. But yeah, that's the end of her experience. So for me, I guess the best part of that one was her attempt to try and explain what this other dimension is like. Like I love with every experience, it's really interesting to hear what the soul feels like, what the soul looks like, how this other dimension is experienced. It's obviously difficult to put into words, but she says she felt that connectedness, she felt that love, she felt that timelessness, all those key ingredients that we hear on a weekly basis on these experiences. And it's a good reminder to us all when we are struggling with our faith or having a bad day, that this experience we're having is so temporary, and it's always going to go up and then down and continue that cycle. And at the end of it, though, we get to experience a little bit more certainty and consistency, it seems. And this is what we have to look forward to. So thank you for joining me again. I just love bringing you this podcast. It's truly a joyful thing. Obviously, I should add that all these opinions are mine. Like, I'm just giving you my take on what my reading of the experience is, and the person having the experience is going to be much more reliable in explaining exactly what happened. But yeah, so that's just something to keep in mind. And obviously your opinion and your reading of the experience is much more significant than how I analyze it. But yeah, thank you for listening. Give you my love as always, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Goodbye.